Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, music lovers and audiophiles. Today, we're doing part 2 of our coverage of the recent Capitol Audio Fest in Washington, D.C. I hope you enjoy it. Alan Taffel, Michael Fremer, Lance Prophet, and I recently traveled to Washington, D.C. for the Capitol Audio Fest to cover it for the Absolute Sound. In this video, I'll be reporting on some of the interesting products that I heard on day 2 of the show. It's a big show, so it's really not possible to cover everything. Therefore, I concentrated on US product introductions. I don't intend to rank things in any overall sense, and I'm reporting on one day of activities at a time because I need to consolidate my notes after each day, or I'd never remember what I heard or saw. Check for additional coverage in subsequent videos or previous videos, and also in the magazine, where Alan will be your humble reporter. Okay, let's go over some of the highlights. First up, we have an introduction. In the Now Listen Here room, I heard the new MTRS stereo amplifier from EMM Labs. This is a massive amplifier. I really doubt our on-screen photography or videography gives you the sheer drama of the size of this thing. It incorporates circuit refinements to the basic design of the EMM monoblocks, which are currently on the market. The MTRS is rated at 200 watts per channel into 8 ohms and 400 watts into 4 ohms. It was fed by a full EMM Labs stack, including the DA2 DAC, which receives streams from an Ineos Pulsar and Zen, and then went into an EMM Pre, which then led to the MTRS amp. The amplifier was driving Joseph Audio Pearl Graphene speakers. The sound, in a very large room, was spacious, with potent bass and a lovely mid-range to treble transition region. The EMM MTRS amplifier is priced at $65,000. Next, we have the introduction of the TAD Grand Evolution 1 loudspeaker. TAD, as you may know, is a storied brand dating from 1975. With new distribution in the US that encompasses TAD's pro audio and their high audio consumer products together, bringing some real distribution expertise to the fore. TAD demoed the Grand Evolution 1. The speaker features a coincidence source mid-range and tweeter driver. You should be able to see that at the top of the rather tall column. The mid-range to woofer crossover is set at a rather low frequency of 250 hertz. And the two 7-inch woofers have a complex multi-layer, multi-material layup, which is said to help with the low to mid-range transition. The Grand Evolution 1 is bottom ported to minimize port noise. The speakers were driven by a TAD D700 DAC, a TAD C600 preamp, and TAD M700 power amps rated at 350 watts into 4 ohms. The speakers were bi-amped, so each speaker was driven by 700 watts. The sound we heard was absolutely top tier. When we listened, we knew nothing about the technical aspects of the speakers. What stood out to me was the clarity and proportion of the critical 300 to 800 hertz region. If you look at maps or diagrams of where the fundamental frequency range of many instruments lie, this is a pretty important region. The Grand Evolution also had a marvelous ability to float an image with superb mid-range detail above a powerful and deep bass foundation. The TAD room was oddly shaped, and like almost all rooms at Capitol Audio Fest, had some room modes. I mean, if you have a room and you have dimensions, you're going to have room modes. But those were in the mid-bass in the TAD room, as they were in many of the rooms. And despite that, the Grand Evolutions were very engaging. The Grand Evolution 1 is priced at $65,000 per pair. Next up, we have 2 introductions, both by Goldnote. They introduced a turntable and a streaming integrated amp. Fidelity Imports first was showing the Goldnote IS-10 streaming integrated amp. This very compact device, it's a half-width, pretty low-profile amplifier, delivers 90 watts per channel into 8 ohms or 140 watts into 4 ohms. The amp can be bridged, so you end up with a 280 watt per channel setup into 8 ohms. You have to add the PA10 companion mono amp, so you've got the amp that comes with the IS10 bridged, 280 watts, plus a 280 watt mono amp. The IS10 is room ready and has an onboard AKM DAC for high-res PCM and MQA streaming. To my mind, this packaging is just about ideal for many real-world environments. The IS10 is priced at $34.99. Fidelity also showed a Gold Note turntable, the T5. This includes an arm, but gives the user a choice of any cartridge, so you can use moving magnet, moving coil, or if you're really crazy, like me, you can use an optical cartridge. The Gold Note T5 is priced at $11.99. Next, we had a demonstration. Boris Meltzner, Major Domo at Amped America, put on an impressive demo. Part 1 was he used his AAP1 preamp and AMP 2400 power amp, driving acoustic quality floor standards. This sounded balanced and clear and imaged rather nicely. Boris chose to set up his equipment to suit the small hotel room, and this avoided the bass bloat on demo in more than a few rooms. I have to add that since the 400 watt power amp is Class D, it uses Pascal modules, by the way, I was impressed with the smoothness and lack of grain in the overall sound. Stephen Stone recently reviewed this $5,000 amp in the Absolute Sound, and you can check out his thoughts here because he had, obviously, a lot more time with it than we did at the show. Boris also did an interesting A-B comparison of a standard generic power cable to the WireWorld Stratus 7 power cable he normally demos with. A simple switch of the power cable to a generic one brought on a more than subtle change in the sound. The easily noticed thing was a shrinking of the soundstage when the WireWorld cable was replaced with a generic cord. Cable doubters will want to explain this away. Frankly, I kind of wanted to explain it away. But then it occurred to me, the open-minded might conclude, why take the risk? I was reinforced in that view when I learned that the WireWorld Stratus 7 power cable is priced at $160 for a 2-meter length. Next up, we have an introduction. The Estelon Aura loudspeakers were shown, I believe, for the first time at a show with the new Dartzeal LHC 208 Mark II streaming integrated amp. This was in one of the Alma Music and Sound rooms. The Estelon speakers, fed by the Dartzeal, created a demo of a simple system. I hope you can see it on screen, but there's essentially one box, 2 speakers, and a few cables. I think that would fit in a lot of living rooms if the design is to taste, and honestly, the Estelons are kind of spectacular looking. The sound was quite nice, with detailed mids and smooth treble accompanying solid bass from the downward firing woofers. To keep the bass balance right, Alma was forced to allow a bit of a lower mid-range scoop, but that's a wise trade-off in my view. Although, I have to say it was a choice that very few setups made, or perhaps could make. They also used some interesting Nemesis diffusers that have, they say, a completely different design than the diffusers that we're accustomed to. These are aimed first and foremost, or at least the ones that they had in the Alma room, at getting proper bass balance in the time domain. Pretty cool. The Estelon Aura speakers are priced at $19,995 per pair, and the Dartzeal LHC 208 is $25,310. This makes for a complete system at just above $50,000, which is hardly a budget price point, but it avoids a lot of the complexity of a server, streamer, DAC, preamp, and amp, and all the attendant cables required to hook that up. It would be easy to spend $5,000 on each of the elements of the electronics stack. Well, it's not a stack, it's one box. But anyway, each of the elements of the electronic system, And that might seem more reasonably priced, but in the end, it would actually cost more. I was impressed. Just a brief interruption, esteemed viewers. As you may know, I'm Tom Martin, Chief Content Officer of The Absolute Sound. We have a new product. It's on the Substack platform, and we're going to do some interesting things with Substack. First of which is reader questions and answers. Each Monday, readers will submit questions. We'll pick the most interesting ones and we'll answer the questions on Friday. We'll also have early access to articles and special blogs that don't appear anywhere else. We hope you'll join us. It's only a cost of a cup of coffee per month. Just check on the screen or in the show notes below. Thanks, and now back to the show. The next introduction we've got is from Michelle. They showed us the new Orb SE Turntable. This features familiar Michelle features like an inverted bearing for better oil distribution, perimeter weighting for a higher polar moment of inertia and the resulting stability. The Orb SE is a sprung suspension turntable, but Michelle has added a special new set of optional isolation feet. This is called Levis, and that's because it features a magnetic repulsion system and nearly complete contact isolation from the stand up to the turntable. The Orb SE with the Techno Arm 2 is priced at $10,999. Michelle also showed a new packaging approach they are using, which is designed to facilitate easy setup for the dealer or the end user. I thought that was very convenient and honestly pretty welcoming for the people who are either new to vinyl, maybe not at this price point, but those of you who are returning to vinyl, you may want a reminder of how to do things, and they had a beautiful instruction book that was really laid out to go step by step by step, so you can't get anything wrong. Of course, a wise move would be to have your dealer set up any turntable like this for you, but just in case you have to set it up or reset it up, I thought this was a nifty ad. Next, we have a demonstration. Dr. Vinyl, who's a turntable setup expert, was showing the Pair Audio Blue Odar turntable with an Integrity True Glider arm and the DS Audio Grandmaster EX cartridge. They ran the Grandmaster EX into a DS Audio Grandmaster, I'm going to call it a phono stage, but it does a different job than a normal phono preamp. Now, taking all of this stuff in order, REG has praised the Pair Audio Blue turntables in the Absolute Sound, and along with the diamond cantilever, yes, there's an integrated diamond cantilever and stylus in the DS Audio cartridge. I thought this was a really intriguing rig. The sound was super clear and dynamic with a rather neutral balance, although we were in a less than ideal seating position. I should mention that this was one of the few rooms where I heard vinyl that sounded right, which I took as a reminder that setup is especially important when playing LPs. One of the more interesting demos at the show was the introduction of the Q Acoustics 5050 speakers driven by a new Unison Research integrated amp fed by an Ineos streamer. It sounded very good, balanced, with good imaging and clarity. Okay, I've said that before, but the kicker here is that the 5050 speakers were $1,999 per pair, and the 95 watt per channel Unison Research Unico Nuovo preamp is $29.99. If you added an Ineos Pulse Mini streamer, you'd have a full high-quality system for under $6,500. Well, before a few cables, but honestly, you'd be in at a pretty reasonable, in my view, price point, and the quality of the sound was impressive. Next, we have the introduction of the Valve Amplification Company's Signature 202 IQ amplifiers. Kevin Hayes, who, as you may know, is the head of VAC, was on hand for the debut of the Signature 202 amps. To make a big impression, literally, he had 4 of the amps running in mono mode to bi-amp a pair of von Schweikert Endeavor speakers. The sound, keeping with the theme of big in a very large room, was clean, tight, open, with fine imaging and deep bass. This was one of the best demos that I heard at the show, at least as far as I can remember from day 2. The 202 IQ amps can be run in mono or stereo mode, as you might have guessed. As mono blocks, they offer 200 watts output from their KT88s, and in stereo mode, you have 100 watts per channel on tap. What's nice about that in a way is you can start with 1, and as Kevin showed, you could end up with 4, or if you're into triamping, 6 of these amplifiers eventually, so there's a heck of an upgrade path for those with deep wallets. The 202 IQ amps are priced at $22,000 per amplifier. VAC also introduced a small form factor preamp, a small form factor phono preamp, and a pair of compact mono amplifiers. Thought, because Kevin is a good guy, we would bring you Kevin Hayes himself describing the new products. Here he is.
The Signature 202 is a brand new amp just now in production. It is not derived from the older Signature 200. It's actually a completely new amplifier. It is part of the heritage of technology we developed for the Statement 452 amplifier back in 2014. So this is bringing all of the elements that made an exceptional breakthrough amplifier into a winsome size and affordable price point. It delivers either 110 watts or so in stereo or 220 in mono by switch setting. It can be set to run as a completely balanced amplifier or with a single input mode of operation. It has a hinged top cover, which allows access to the 4 KT88 output tubes and the 4 6SN7 input and driver tubes. It features our patented IQ continuous automatic bias circuit, which is able to see through whatever you're playing to the true underlying idle point of the tube in real time and keep that from varying more than 1%, making a very solid foundation under the music, because other biasing schemes either drift toward higher current or lower current with increased volume. This circuit stops that from happening, which makes the relationship between the tube's load line and the speaker's impedance non-varying, which again increases detail, power, performance. It minimizes distortion, it minimizes noise also by keeping the tubes perfectly in balance. Because it knows what bias voltage is required to make the tube run correctly, it can tell you when a tube is getting weak, and will flag that with a green indicator light saying, I'll make the best of it for now, but replace me when you can. Or if a tube actually mechanically breaks inside and forms a hard short circuit, the amplifier will shut down before the fuse can blow and tell you by light which tube caused the problem. It also prevents the development of runaway tubes, which typically are caused by gas currents in the tubes. You would think they're really hot tubes, they're actually weak tubes, and people keep turning the bias up until finally it kicks over into a thermal runaway mode. This system, by virtue of preventing it from drifting at all, prevents runaways from occurring, and therefore prolongs tube life in some circumstances. And that, I think, covers the majority of what you see here. Nice styling, metallic paint, beautiful elliptical turn-ins to the glass. This retails in the US for $22,000.
Next, we have the introduction of the Acoustic Energy Corinium speakers. Fidelity Imports was launching these speakers, driving them with a Solnote A2 integrated amp and a Solnote D2 DAC. They also used an Ineos statement streamer. The sound was warm and quick during our brief listen. I also have to say, I would rate the optional British Racing Green paint as outstanding, but other colors are possible if you're not an Anglophile. The Acoustic Energy Corinium speakers are priced at $74.99 in 3 standard finishes, including a wood finish, or at $84.99 in the optional finish that we saw in BRG paint. Next, we have an introduction of the Stenheim Illumine 2.5 speakers. Stenheim was demonstrating these new speakers, and I have to start out by saying, just in case it's not obvious on screen, that they are quite a bit smaller than what we're accustomed to from Stenheim. Their mega speakers, if you've seen them, really are impressively large. But the smaller Illumine 2.5 is a 37-inch tall floor stander, so it's semi-diminutive with 2 ported 6.5-inch woofers and a 1-inch tweeter. While the package is compact, each speaker weighs 100 pounds, demonstrating the seriousness of the design and its connection to the larger Stenheims. The Illumine 2.5 is priced at $23,500 per pair. Then we had the introduction of the Cyrus TTP turntable and the Spender Classic 100 speakers. In the days of my youth, I was told what it means to be an audiophile, and that included experience with the Spender BC1 speakers. 50 years later, Spender has launched a new member of the Classic range, the Model 100. This one technically has no connection to the Spenders of yesteryear, except that in concept it's like the BC3, and of course, like all Spenders, it uses high-quality drivers in a carefully designed and finished cabinet. The Classic 100 has a 12-inch ported woofer, a 7-inch mid-range, and a 1.2-inch tweeter. The mid-range driver is set up to avoid crossing over in the vital mid-range, with the woofer to mid-range crossover set at 490 Hz and the mid-range to tweeter crossover set at 3.6K. Sensitivity is a very nice 89 dB. The Classic 100s are priced at $14,800 per pair. Along with that, Cyrus had a full range of half-width product on display, but the new item they were showing was a turntable. The TTP turntable has an electronically controlled DC motor, precision main bearing, a damped aluminum chassis, and a low-friction 9-inch arm. It can also be upgraded with a standard Cyrus external power supply, which is compatible with all the members of this half-width electronics product line. The TTP turntable is priced at $5,800. I hope you've enjoyed this show report. Please check back for part 1 of this series, and also look for our third report, which covers some of the special technologies that were on display and demo at the Capitol Audio Fest. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, please click the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell, look in the show notes for the URL that leads to a free subscription to our weekly newsletter. And of course, we would love it if you would subscribe to the Absolute Sound magazine. We've been publishing it for 50 years, and it contains our flagship reviews. Thanks for visiting, and we hope to see you again.